Yeah.
Good morning.
Finally. Finally.
Good morning, and welcome to Extraordinary Stories with Extraordinary People. My name is Amy Kochek, and I am the owner of Amy Kochek Creative. I am a ghostwriter, I am a writing coach, I'm an editor, but most importantly, I am all things story related because I believe that one of the most powerful assets that we have in our lives is our story. Our story is what we use to heal ourselves, to help us have our own personal breakthroughs in our lives. But even more importantly, our stories are what we can use to help other people to overcome, to believe that there is greater in their lives. So I've used my platform for a little over a year to discuss and to highlight the stories of some really incredible people that are walking this earth right now. And I think sometimes when it comes to sharing stories, a lot of people have incredible stories and we would just never know it. And it's not because people don't necessarily share their story, but sometimes we don't have the opportunity to hear and to share. So I want to use my platform as much as I can to highlight some really incredible people on this earth that are doing great things. And today is no different. My guest is Chris Nasuti. And he has an amazing story that I'm so excited for him to share this morning because I think it's going to help a lot of people at whatever stage of your journey that you are at. So, Chris, I'm going to lob it to you. So, start with just telling us who you are, what you do, any other relevant information you want to share with us.
All righty. Thank you, Amy. Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. Um, like Amy said, my name is Chris Nasuti. I am from the Philadelphia area originally. I live in Tampa now. I do business development and marketing for a substance abuse treatment center called Turning Point of Tampa. We treat chemical dependency as well as eating disorder, and I am also an alumni of the facility. So 4 years ago, by amazing happenstance, I ended up down here and got clean and sober. So that's kind of like the very brief overview of it.
Excellent. Okay, so I want to talk about the pivotal moment. I want to talk about the thing that happened in your life that shifted you from the trajectory that you were on to something else in your life. And I want you to start a little bit before that. What was going on before that moment, that pivotal moment in your life? Take us there.
Okay. I mean, the real gist of it was that I was an active alcoholic and drug addict for over 25 years. Um, it wasn't, as we say, like totally always unmanageable, but at the end, I was an intravenous heroin user. So the pivotal moment was kind of twofold. So I had a partner. She was never actually my wife, but her name was Angel. Ironically enough, we shared a birthday. So January 28th was our birthday, and she was kind of like the Nancy to my Sid, the Bonnie to the Clyde, however you want to refer to it. And we were, at the end, we were just junkies. And on April 8th of 2016, she passed away of an overdose. So that was kind of I mean, it was just something that I had never kind of prepared for. At that point, we had been together for 17 years. We had traveled all over the country. We had done all kinds of amazing things. And that was just like I guess the moment where I'm either going to change or I'm going to be next. So the other side of that was, now this is going to be kind of graphic and I apologize, but I was using heroin and intravenously injecting into my neck. And at one point, I missed the vein that I was going for, and I got an infection that eventually became a necrotic abscess. So this all happened within, the, her passing and that thing that happened was within 2 days. So over a period of about 4 weeks, everything kind of escalated. And by the time I got here, I mean, you can see the remnants of it, but I had like a necrotic abscess that was about this big on my neck. So it almost killed me as well. So that was kind of like the pivotal twofold moment.
Yeah. Let me go back to the 15 to 20 years of alcohol and drug use.
Yeah.
I know a lot of times when it comes to addiction, there's a source of it. There's a reason why we are dependent upon that. Why do you believe that you started down that road, and why did you stay on that road so long?
Um, I mean, depending on who you ask, I guess I think I have a genetic predisposition. It was also kind of like the nature of our group of friends, my group of friends up in New Jersey and the Philadelphia area, where we just partied. I mean, we partied aggressively, and it was like almost a sport. And the disease of alcoholism and addiction is progressive, and it just progressed to what I never thought it would. And I have a lot of friends that were on the same path that eventually stopped and kind of got their life together. And why I was unable to ever stop is probably an entire another podcast. It's just, who really knows, and we talk about manageability, like in like the program. I am involved in a 12-step program. I'm not going to break any anonymity, but my life was unmanageable from 19 until 41 when I got sober. So the why, I don't think I will ever understand or know. But that's just kind of, I mean, again, it's in my blood, it's in my genes, and then once I get going, there's just no stopping. It's just kind of how I
Yeah.
am.
I want to go to that word unmanageable. Why did you feel like your life was unmanageable?
Well, I mean, from the age of 20, when the first time that I failed out of college, which was a result of my alcoholism, over the arc of the next 20 years, it's not like I didn't maintain jobs. I didn't, I was estranged from my family. There's like the practical side of it of like, I cannot manage my life in like finances and relationships, but there's also the emotional and spiritual side of it where I'm just miserable all day and I see no way out of what I'm doing. It becomes something where, for me, like the physical part of it was just as bad as the mental. I mean, withdrawals from heroin, and I was also a benzo user. I used Xanax. You know, it's like nothing you could imagine. I had 5 grand mal seizures in a detox in Maryland one time. So it's just like that physical part of it, the emotional part of it. It was just all completely it was just a mess. I don't know how else to describe it.
Yeah. How many times did you try to get sober or feeling like the road that you were walking down you needed to change?
I went to that treatment center. Treatment center, I used that very loosely in 2011, more to appease some friends, which I had no intention of stopping because I knew Angel was home using. So when I got out, I knew I was going to get out and get high with her. So one time, I had the moment of surrender. I begged my family for help, and I went to treatment, and I've been clean and sober since. I never went to a meeting. I never went to treatment. I never really went to detox. And the other side of that is that we talk about moments of clarity or like the prayer of like help. Like I prayed to not wake up often. I said like just it would be easier probably for me and for everyone else if I just wasn't here anymore because I saw no purpose in my life, which is a really sad testament.
Yeah. So after you get to that point of your significant other passing away and you had the injury to your neck, how does this then become the moment where you shift?
Well, in the program, we talk about surrender, right? And I still get emotional talking about it because it's just a lot. But, my family supported me in spite of being estranged from them. And I had a moment. My brother was kind of babysitting me, trying to figure out exactly what they were going to do with me. And, I told him, I said, like, I am a stone cold junkie and I need help. And any help that you're willing to offer, like I remember saying, like, send me to Iowa for a year, like whatever it looks like. I just know that I'm going to be next, and I just want the pain to stop. It was just enough of all of it.
So once you proclaim that surrender moment, what was the next step after that?
um, so I happen to have some friends that live down here, who were actually clean and sober as well. Angel and I introduced them, and they went and got married, and we drank and used with them. James, her husband, was a friend of mine when I lived out in Lake Tahoe, and Sheila and Angel bartended together. And when I told my family, both my brother and my sister, like, I need to get help, and they were saying like, well, maybe we can find some place in Philadelphia. And I was like, you've got to just get me out of here. So, it just kind of, I ended up here, like I said, by happenstance, but it was the best thing that ever happened. I mean, I they were like, let's just get him out of there, out of Philadelphia area, and we'll figure it out. And I ended up taking a flight, which is a whole nother story. And I ended up down here. My sister took a red eye and met me. And then even that kind of like situation and how it unfolded was like chaotic and spiritual. And it just kind of played out like I really believe like God had a plan for me. It just kind of worked out the way it worked out.
Yeah. So then what brings you to Tampa? Why Tampa?
Like I said, that's where our friends lived. So it was
Oh, okay.
like he had been through. He actually had gone to that treatment center again. I use that very loosely in Maryland where I had the seizures. So he helped me get in there before, and they were just like, we don't know what to do, and they were like, just get him here, even if he has to like detox on our couch. We will babysit him and keep an eye on him until we can figure out some sort of plan. And there was no real plan. That's the like really, it's like a miracle. The whole thing.
Yeah. So then once you get to Tampa, take us through your recovery process and what that looks like.
All right, so so like I said, my sister took the red eye. We tried to go to like a state funded facility. And at that point, like I said, the abscess was, 3 inches by 4 inches or something on my neck. And we tried to do the intake process and they're like, you have to go to the hospital. Like, this is like really, really bad, serious. So I was taken to St. Joe's Hospital. They rushed me in, did emergency surgery. I ended up being there for, I think, 10 days, like a quarantined room and everything. And then my my sister has a friend who owns a treatment center in Los Angeles, and she reached out to him and said, like, what are we going to do? Like, I don't feel comfortable sending him to this state facility because, like, my life every day was that of a junkie. Like, nothing surprised me, right? But we went there. There was like a methadone clinic, and it was something like my sister's a polished professional. It was just something that was totally foreign to her. And then so she called her friend and she recommended, like you said, if you're in the Tampa area, I recommend you go to Turning Point of Tampa. That's kind of how it worked out.
So when you're going through the recovery process, what is coming up for you that helps you start to deal with the things that are pushing you back to your addiction? Because this is such a complex topic in that everybody's recovery looks different, right?
Right.
So what does it look like emotionally and spiritually for you that allows you to then come to live years of just being clean?
You mean like today, to this moment?
Yeah, well, just the process of when you get to Tampa and you find Turning Point, what's coming up as far as spiritually and mentally and physically that's allowing you to continue to be clean?
Well, I had several, I mean, however you want to describe it, a burning bush moment, a spiritual experience. What was like, it seemed like there was otherworldly stuff happening. Um, there was a ladybug, there was a butterfly, and I felt like each one of those kind of moments felt like I was on the right path. And again, it's just like that moment of surrender, of just feeling like I can't go on. And then so after I got out of detox and I went to treatment at Turning Point, they bring meetings in, and I heard people that I could relate to, and I was like, if he can do it, like, why can't I do it? Like, why is it that I'm so far gone? And I didn't believe that. And I don't know, like, I have people tell me like I'm strong, and it makes me feel really uncomfortable. Even like the extraordinary people thing. Like, I don't think I'm extraordinary by any means, but it's like, it was just enough pain. Like, pain is the touchstone of a spiritual experience. But pain is the best motivator. And I had all of it. I had emotional, spiritual, physical pain. I mean, I went through that treatment center for 60 days with a large bandage on my neck, and I had to go see the wound care team each week where they have to catheterize and scrape the wound. And it was like, it was just a constant reminder of like, this is what I've done to myself. This is what my life has become. And again, like, seeing the other side of these people that are clean and sober and living amazing lives. Like, I was like, well, why not me? Why not?
Yeah. How did you, because I know you talked about in your turning point moment, realizing that your life didn't have purpose. On your journey, when did you kind of discover that you did have purpose? And what does that look like for you?
So again, like I have no discernible job resume when I got here. I mean, that's, I say that with all like humility, it's like I was not employed, I wasn't employable, I wasn't accountable, responsible, any of those adjectives. And it was just like everybody that, like, you get a sponsor and you get a support network and you have a group of people that you sober with, like everyone says, just don't get high today. Like go to a meeting, pray, read literature. We're taught to do certain things. And they said, like, eventually, like, I assure you, whatever that purpose will be, it will show itself. So that's kind of how I got started working in the treatment field. I was very active in the program, and a gentleman who owns and runs a treatment center kind of saw me in the meetings, and he kind of took a chance on me. And he's like, and I didn't normally, people start out as like a tech, and he asked me if I would do admissions for him, which is kind of sort of like a sales position almost, which I'm like the first point of contact. And I mean, he took a huge risk. And through that journey, I showed up, I did a good job. I got promoted there. And like, it was that the purpose found me more than I found my purpose, I would say. It just sort of
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. So when it comes to the what you kind of turn to, right? Because an addiction sometimes becomes your what you turn to for everything, right? When you're
Sure.
celebrating, when you're sad, all of it. What have you shifted to now so that the addiction no longer is needed and it's no longer what you turn to?
I mean, I just live a fulfilled life today. I mean, like to be professionally fulfilled is something that like I never really experienced before, and like to be a brother and to be a nephew or whatever the sort of roles that I attribute to myself. They say like kind of in sobriety or in recovery, like eventually like it's no longer even it's not on my radar. I don't have any kind of obsession. I don't want to drink. I don't want to use. I just think that seeing my own, I guess, with all appropriate humility, seeing the change that I've been able to make, and making the correlation that all of the bad things in my life happen as a result of my addiction. It's just not even. It's just not even it's not even a thought. But again, I am very proactive about the work that I have to do to stay sober.
Yeah. Um, when you through your recovery journey, did you have moments where you almost relapsed, and then what did you do in those moments to recenter yourself?
So honestly, I would say there was only one, and it was not even really close to a relapse. But it's funny. So you get a sponsor, and that sponsor is someone who's gone through the steps, who's going to take you through the steps, so then you can then take someone else. And with everything that I went through, we talk about the obsession, right? It's an obsession of the mind, that a thing where like I will do anything to make this thing go away, right? So my sponsor early on is like, you've got to pray for the obsession to remove. And I'm like, I don't have it. He's like, just do what I'm telling you, right? Which is a big issue of mine. My pride and arrogance probably cost me a Division I baseball scholarship because I was always uncoachable. But so I was waiting tables early on, and I had a bad day, and I don't remember what it was, whether it was like I didn't have a car for 22 months. I lived in a halfway house. Like it was just, there were those moments where I questioned whether it was all going to work out. And I will never forget, I had to make a drink, and it was a dirty martini. And I loved dirty martinis. And it was just that moment of like, what do I do? And you're taught to call your sponsor or make a network, call someone, and I couldn't call anyone. So I relied on God. I prayed, and I walked. I served the drink. I walked into the cooler. I hit my knees, and I prayed, and like, so just like get me just through today, long enough that I can go be a part of, with my friends who I got sober with. And that was really the only time that I've experienced that, and I'm like beyond grateful for that.
Yeah. What would you say through this entire experience? What would you say is like your biggest lesson from moving through like a really deep addiction to pretty much living without that addiction? What would you say is your biggest lesson that you've learned?
I guess that it's never too late. I got sober at 41, and I just, kind of given up. And really like my spiritual life is the probably the most important thing to me. like my relationship with something bigger, and I don't need to put a name on it. It's just none of that really interests me, but my reliance on something other than my own thinking and like a spiritual journey of, is like, it's just like we can do anything, like I'm training for a sprint triathlon. I didn't go to a gym for 20 years, and I started exercising. Like all of these things that I told myself that I couldn't do, it's just a shift in thinking. If I just think a little bit differently and open like the door of willingness and say like maybe, then why not, like why not?
Yeah. From the standpoint of like really working on your spiritual life, and I know sometimes people have a desire to work on that, right? Like understanding there's a spiritual side of me. What would you say to someone who's trying to go on a spiritual journey but doesn't know where to start, or maybe has been disillusioned by religion? What would you say is a good start for them?
I mean, that's a great question. I mean, because I was absolutely disillusioned by religion, but I think not getting caught up in like the dogma of it, or however you want to describe it, is, I would say, like, this is what I do, right, as a sponsor with somebody that's like kind of struggling. I'll do like characteristics of someone that you would say is God, right? Like, what would you say? Like, an example: who's the first person that loved you unconditionally? Right? That would be like either your mom or your dad. They tolerated your crying in the middle of the night. They changed your diaper, right? There's just an unconditional love. And like that's a starting point. And everybody's journey is a little different, whether it's church or yoga or meditation. The themes of all of those things are all the same. Like it's love one another, don't steal, don't lie, don't cheat, be of service. I mean, I just feel like the work becomes finding your own niche of like how you feel comfortable with it. And it was hard. I mean, that was a big thing for me of overcoming that resentment that I had towards the church. I mean, that was a huge thing. But just to just, even if it's like something as simple as like pray to be open-minded, pray to be willing to accept something else. And when we start to do that, we see those little synchronistic moments where it's like, how did that just happen? Like it manifests for me with the number 46. It's one of those things that like those things happen at the time where you're like, wow, like that is something bigger than me. Like there's something going on that I can't explain. And just open your heart and your mind to try and to perceive those things. It's hard work for sure, but it can be done.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. What do you think that recovery has given you back that you feel like addiction stole from you?
Everything. I mean, I'll cry right now, but my relationship with my brother and sister is like, I was estranged from my brother for over 10 years, my sister for 3. I mean, I'm a dad. I'm employed. It's given me everything. Like literally, I was nothing before this. And I mean, who I am intrinsically, right, is like, that's sort of like the struggle or the work in recovery is like, we talk about character defects, right? But the other side of that coin is like the character asset, and they usually correlate. And I was told from a very young age that I was special and unique, and I was smart and athletic, but it's like I never felt like that about myself, but to see other people see me that way has been like a huge benefit. I have a family, I have a job, I have people that love me, that depend on me. It's like it's given me everything. It really has.
Yeah. What would you say? What would you say to someone right now who is struggling with an addiction, knows that they need to walk away from it, and maybe they've tried a couple times and they feel like a failure? And addiction can span from behaviors to substances, but someone who's just trying to overcome some form of addiction, what would be some advice or a word of encouragement that you could give them?
Well, the advice that I would give, and I'm we're not supposed to give advice like in the pro, but like if you ask for help, accept the help. Like it's the most baffling. They refer to alcoholism or addiction as cunning, baffling, and powerful. And it's just like a quick little story. My role at Turning Point has changed because doing marketing and business development is mostly on the road, so I've been pulled off the road. So I've been like helping around the facility, and I see people come in, I mean, broken, lost their job, their wife wants to leave them, their family wants nothing to do with them. Day one or day two, they start to feel a little better. And it's like, I'll do anything. I will do anything anyone asks for me. 2 weeks later, when we say go to a halfway house, they say no. We say, like, any kind of, it's just, it's absolutely mind blowing. And it's just alcoholism. It's just what addiction is. But that being said, is like, there has to be not only surrender, but there has to be some willingness. So there's always somebody, even if you're like the lowest of, and I was very fortunate. Like I am forever indebted to my family. And, you know, to put it bluntly, they paid for my treatment, which is not cheap. And I'm beyond blessed, but there are facilities. So like, if you're really serious, it like has to be that moment of like, okay, I will do what's asked of me. And that's way easier said than done. It took me 25 years to get to that moment and all of the pain and suffering that I had to experience to finally have that. But when you get that moment of surrender, like you can, you know, like it always can change. Like it can always be better. And, you know, the words of encouragement is like, if you want proof that this works, go to a meeting somewhere. Like that is evidence sitting in a room that the things that we're asked to do works. Like there is, you know, not everybody is new or just coming back. Like there are people that have, you know, 5, 10, 15, 25 years of sobriety and they talk about their life. Like if you want proof, go talk to that person, ask them how they did it, and then listen to what they say. Like not everybody needs treatment. You know, a lot of people in the program are not big proponents of treatment, and I understand that. But like just listen to someone else and be willing. It's not rocket science.
Yeah. Who would you say it was like the most influential person on your path to recovery?
Wow. Um, that's a that is a hard question. The most influential person on my path. I mean, early on to get me into treatment was my brother and my sister. You know, they showed up for me I still don't sometimes feel like I like deserved or warranted the love that they showed me. But after that, it's really been like it's been a group of people. It's been a group of men. It really has. My first sponsor, the guys that I got sober with, like the fellowship that I keep close. I mean, it's interesting. I kind of look at it as like a spiritual like arsenal. I have someone for everything, right? I have someone that's going to give it to me straight. I have friends that I can kind of like dork around with. I have guys that are like my spiritual mentors. I have a little bit of everything, and like that's all like offered to me for free. So it's like to put one person is like almost impossible.
Yeah. Last question.
Mm-hmm.
From the standpoint of just the types of work that you do,
Mm-hmm.
do you do specific like recovery counseling or working one-on-one with people that are struggling with addiction? And what would you say is like the number one pushback with people who are struggling?
Well, not professionally, but yeah, like part of the program, right, is you go through the 12 steps, and then the 12th step is basically service work where you take other people through the steps. So I act as a sponsor, right? So I mean, I'm not a professional, I'm not paid. I just kind of guide them the way that I was guided. And it's exactly what I just said. It's like it's something so simple. Like this guy will, you know, a guy will come up to me in a meeting. He'll say, "I really like what you had to say," or I've been seeing you. Like, will you be my sponsor?" And I say yes. And I say, "Can you call me at 8:30 tomorrow morning?" Now, 9 times out of 10, like unemployed or in a treatment center or in a halfway house, and they're like, "Oh yeah, 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 yeah." At 11:30, my phone rings. Like, and I don't know what was different for me. I genuinely don't. But when my first sponsor said call me at 7:30, I called him at 7:30. Like it's just I really believe that it was like a God working through me to like sort of just like be willing. But I mean, the pushback is like people don't want to people just don't want to like 9 times out of 10 people don't really want to stop, but when they do, it's like they think that they know best, and it's really interesting. It's like my best thinking gets me to jail. People pass away. I end up in the hospital in treatment. So I realized that, and I made that kind of correlation. So I was humbled enough to be taught. You know, I mean, I think that's what humility is the ability to be teachable, to
Yeah.
remain teachable.
Yeah. I love that. Chris, how can people reach out to you if they want to know more about you, or maybe they are struggling and
Yeah.
maybe they want to get some feedback? How do people contact you?
I mean, any social media is fine. Chris Nasuti. I mean, I'm on Facebook. You can just put my name in Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn. I mean, I can give you my phone number if you like. I mean, you can go through Amy. I'm like, what's the most interesting thing about the one of the kind of paradoxes of the program is like when people ask me for help, it keeps me sober. Like how that works, I don't know, but it's like if anyone is a family member, anyone you might know, like honestly, if it's through me or through Amy or through a mutual friend, like you can absolutely reach out. And if you would like to, I can provide you my phone number. You know, I kind of use that professionally as well. But I mean, any hour of the day, because I need it as much as probably you or they might need it.
Yeah, I love that. Chris, thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you so much for your vulnerability and for your story. And most of all, thank you for the journey that you've walked that now gives you the opportunity to sit before us and give us hope for any person that's struggling with addiction, or you have a family member that's struggling with addiction. Share this video with them. Let them see that there's hope on the other side of this. So thank you once again for joining me for another episode of Extraordinary Stories with Extraordinary People. Chris, thank you again. And everybody else, have a wonderful day.